Okay, let's talk about Russell Brand. I'm going to go through that video he put out, almost sentence by sentence, so you'll have a better understanding not only from a body language perspective, but also a perspective of persuasion. This is brilliant. He executed this perfectly, and I think you're really going to like it.
Hello. Firstly, thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support.
With that one sentence, he accomplishes a whole lot because he gives you the impression there's all these people that are sending these wonderful messages of support.
Thank you for these incredible and overwhelming messages of support.
Now, he may have gotten all that support. He may have gotten all those messages. I don't know. But he gives you the impression he has. And that's the perfect first move.
We're very fortunate in a way to live in a time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate, I suppose, that this is happening at a time where we know that the law has become a kind of weapon.
We are very fortunate. Why would he say we? Because he wants to give you the feeling it's you and him doing this together. You're with him. You're part of it.
We're very fortunate. We're very fortunate. We know.
I don't understand this juxtaposition of, not trusting the government with trusting the government and then where he's at with this. That's his way of telling us that the law has now become a weapon.
Time where there's so little trust in the British government. We're very fortunate.
And he's illustrating a lot here with his hands, and they're landing where they should. When you illustrate something, that's your brain emphasizing specific words and phrases, like I did just then, specific words and phrases. And when they land where they're supposed to, that's good. They'll let you know he's confident about that statement, and it's probably most likely not deceptive. But if they don't land where they're supposed to, if they don't land on the words or they keep going, usually something's up. There's a lot going on with his eyebrows, but that keeps us engaged and keeps us looking at him. And for the most part, his mouth has been fairly wide open the whole time. I mean, obviously he's talking and he's using his whole mouth, but when he says weapon, his mouth gets a little bit tighter.
That the law has become a kind of weapon.
That might indicate some anger in there.
To be used against people, institutions, and sometimes entire nations that will not accept and tolerate levels of corruption that are unprecedented. I'm speaking particularly to those of you that are watching this in the UK.
And now he compares this weapon to people and nations. So it goes from people all the way up to these big nations. That covers everybody. His eye contact with the camera is still strong. His voice tone, volume, and cadence are all stable. Cadence is how fast you talk. So his cadence hasn't sped up or slowed down. His voice volume has stayed pretty much the same, and his tone has stayed the same.
How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer?
This is brilliant because he brings you into thinking about your feelings for the government, the entity that's charged him with a crime. So far, this is the most he's broken eye contact with the camera. That sort of gives you a break from what's happening, and it lets your brain think by itself for a couple of seconds.
How do you feel about...
And this is a brilliant move because he's evoking emotion.
How do you feel about your legal system right now? How do you feel about some of the high-profile cases that are not being pursued and prosecuted? How do you feel that the Southport murders were handled? How do you feel about the government of Keir Starmer? Now, that's just sort of general context. I've always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord. I was a drug addict, a sex addict, and an imbecile. But what I never was a...
Now he's making the comparison of the old me to the new me.
I always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children.
He's talking about how he was a fool, a drug addict, and a sex addict, and all these other things going on.
I always told you guys that when I was young and single, before I had my wife and family, who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children, I was a fool.
In other words, a bad guy before he settled down and got married and had kids. And that big smile helps because it's telling your brain he's a good guy. And that's what we like to see and hear.
Wife and family who were just out of shot over there, my beautiful children. I was a fool, man. I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord.
There's one thing that bothers me here, and it's a red flag. And don't get me wrong, because me and Jesus get along great. Absolutely fantastically. His dad loves me. Can't get along, good enough. We have the best time. So when someone brings up religion and they're in question for something that they did, especially when it comes to ethics, That always gives me a little red flag because I've dealt with so many people who have brought that into the situation or into the conversation as they defend themselves, for me to later find out they're full.
I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord.
Bank of America recently announced a data breach, and here's what's really disturbing about that. They didn't tell anybody about it for months. And on average, it takes a company about 277 days to report a breach. And your personal data could have been exposed months ago, and you're just now hearing about it. This isn't even the first breach that Bank of America has had this year. And last year, Citigroup and JP Morgan Chase both announced breaches. And your bank could be breached right now, and it could be months before you find out about it. Do you want to give a criminal a 9-month head start? No. That's why it's really important to be talking about today's sponsor, Aura. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web. And they're going to let me know fast if anybody tries to use that information to access my credit or bank accounts. And they give me up to $5 million in identity theft insurance if the worst case scenario happens. They also provide a bunch of other features that keep you safe online, all inside one app. And you can go to aura.com/Scott Rouse for a 14-day free trial. And that'll be enough time for Aura to find out if your personal data has been exposed. You'll learn about it long before any of these companies are forced to tell you about it. I highly recommend you do this right now, because the only thing most of these companies are going to do to help you is offer you free credit monitoring. Free credit monitoring after the fact. And that's like installing security cameras after your house has been robbed. Look, I get it. There are so many data breaches, your social security number might as well be written on a bathroom wall. But if you haven't been a victim to fraud yet, then why are you still rolling the dice? If it's because protecting yourself feels overwhelming, let Aura do all the hard work for you. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to these data breaches. And if you don't want to either, then you can go to aura.com/Scott Rouse for a 14-day free trial. I'll put that link in the description below. Especially when it's phrased in some way like living in the light of the Lord. I don't know, man. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm not putting him down for that. I'm just saying it sounds odd to me.
I was a fool before I lived in the light of the Lord.
Think about the times you've heard somebody say, I swear to God, as God is my witness. I put my hand on the Bible that this didn't happen, this didn't happen. Then you find out later they're not telling the truth. There's no need to bring religion into your argument. No reason whatsoever. However, he's making a comparison between his old self and his new self. So I get that, but it just hits me weird.
I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes.
This video has the least amount of movement of all the videos we've watched. One blink, that's at the beginning, one sentence, and he wants you to be engaged, but that's fine, that's cool. The thing that bothers me here, though, is when he smiles, that's a fake smile. Obviously, he's rehearsed it a couple of times and all that. That's not a true smile. How do we know? Because it's pretty close. When you look at the little wrinkles, when you always hear when somebody smiles, it's a real smile. When you see little wrinkles, by their eyes. Anybody who smiles is going to have that, real or fake. When you squint, you get those little wrinkles, right? However, the real smiles, the real wrinkle, when that happens, comes at an angle like this. It doesn't come down like this. It comes at an angle like this. That's how you know the difference. And here, these are coming down straight like this. They're not coming in at an angle. So that's how we know it's not a real smile. Now, it may be tough to conjure up a smile when you're talking about the charges that are up against him, especially if he didn't do it. So there's probably a lot of anger and frustration in there too. So it's probably tough to, conjure up a good real smile. But it's really important to have a real smile at a time like this. So if you run into somebody who understands that, they'll see that and go, it's fake, like we're doing here. Or a lot of people, and I always talk about how women have women's intuition. That's one of those little things that the women's brain catches. They'll let you know. That gives you that feeling, I don't know about this. That's one of the little things I'm always talking about. The small things that the female brain captures that the male brain doesn't. And what keeps us in the men, in the illusion that we know everything.
I've never engaged in non-consensual activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes.
There are two illustrators he uses here. One of them wipes away the non-consensual activity.
I've never engaged in non-consensual activity.
And that second illustrator, when he does that, that's his brain emphasizing the fact that he prays we see he's not that kind of person.
Activity. I pray that you can see that by looking in my eyes.
And he's never been involved with non-consensual activity like that. They both land where they should, and they're very smooth, and that lets us know there's confidence with that. No deception. And so far, there are no clusters of deception.
I want to thank all of you for your continuing support. I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. In the meantime, you lot, stay free, and we will be continuing to discuss this matter. Praise the Lord.
I want to thank you for all your continuing support. That harks back to the thing he did at the very beginning, giving us the assumption that he knows that we are with him and are for him, that there are people who are supporting what he's saying. And that's a great move. And when he's talking about being incredibly grateful for the opportunity to defend himself in court, that's letting everybody know that he's going to say he didn't do this, and he's going to come on with a lawyer or a bunch of lawyers and fight this. And don't get me wrong, he's not being aggressive. He's just letting you know what's going to happen next. And when he's touching his chest, that's something that's symbolic for this comes from the heart, and I mean it, and I have feelings about this, and it's true, and all that. That's normal. That's fine.
I want to let you know that our show will be on Rumble on Monday. Thanks for your support there. And of course, I'm now going to have the opportunity to defend these charges in court, and I'm incredibly grateful for that.
And when he turns the camera off, it's really interesting because that expression on his face goes away. And it sort of goes back to, you can see for a split second that this is worrying him. It's heavy on him, which it should be, and that's normal for it to be that way. But when that expression goes away that fast, oof, that's kind of rough. So overall, there's really not enough information here to make a decision about whether he's telling the truth or not. You know, you're supposed to be able to say, oh, the body language expert can see what it doesn't work that way. I talk about that all the time. You can't look at just a couple of body language cues and say, oh, this guy's guilty. There's not even a cluster in here to look at to say he's guilty or innocent. It's really tough to tell in this one because he's not only a fantastic actor, this guy's brilliant. He really is. I mean, if you've ever listened to him talk before, he's really smart. I mean, he's got the high-end vernacular of somebody who's really not just smart, he's intelligent. He's really smart. So I'm sure he's approaching this from the best way possible. He's found out however you're supposed to do it, and that's what he's going to do. It would be my opinion on that. Because, man, he's really smart. And I'm not saying, oh, that means he's innocent. It doesn't mean it either way. I'm just saying he's really smart. So he's going to do whatever you're supposed to do. That's what he's going to do. So whether he did this or not, I can't really tell from this, to be honest with you. I don't think anybody can. So this should be interesting when it gets to court. There'll be more video, and we'll have more to go over and more to look at, and we can make better decisions after we have more information about what's going on and what might have happened. All right, if you have any questions about body language or you want me to break something down, email me, bodylanguagequestions@gmail.com, and I'll get right on it.